Welcome back to the Modern Craftsman podcast. I'm Schiffer with obviously my co-host Tyler. Today we have a guest who embodies the philosophy of craftsmanship, tradition, and thoughtful home building. And he's someone who doesn't just build homes, he builds classics. Brady Fry is the man behind Fry Classic Homes in Nashville. He's joining us today. And if you're in the world of custom home building, you know that Brady's work isn't just about construction, it's about legacy. He's got deep roots in Nashville. His approach blends timeless architecture with modern innovation, creating homes that feel like they've been standing for 100 years, yet function for the way we live today. Brady is someone that recently shot me a DM and wanted to open up the conversation about working with elite architects and what struggles he faced in order to accomplish that. And I think a lot of you will really benefit from this conversation. This podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. Looking for the easiest way to install a window wall? Andersen's Easy Connect joining system is your answer. The system offers ultimate convenience on the job site, making it simpler to install the large window combinations homeowners want while reducing the resources needed. Most contractors report they can cut the number of installers by 50% with the Andersen Easy Connecting joining system.
Available for A-Series and 100 Series windows, this patented system divides large window combinations into smaller factory-assembled subgroups. This means all necessary joining components are pre-applied, so they are ready to install directly into the rough opening upon arrival. This system uses interlocking fiberglass joining plates, providing design flexibility without sacrificing performance. It's tested to AAMA 450 standards and Hallmark certified for air, water, and structural performance. Additionally, the reinforced joining with A-Series windows is approved for high-velocity hurricane zones. Learn more at andersenwindows.com/moderncraftsman.
This podcast is also brought to you by Buildertrend. Tax season is coming. And if you're not ready, well, Uncle Sam will be. This year, don't just survive, thrive. Buildertrend teamed up with the CPA and the founder of Month End to bring you a webinar that's all about construction-specific tax strategies.
From maximizing your deductions to streamlining your prep, this is the game-changing knowledge you didn't know you needed. Get your 2025 taxes in order and keep more of your hard-earned cash. Watch it on demand now at buildertrend.com/mctaxprep.
This podcast is also brought to you by Velux. You're always looking for ways to wow homeowners, and who doesn't want more natural light? With Velux skylights, you can transform any space by adding more natural light without sacrificing privacy.
Bring life to focal points, including the kitchen or living room, or brighten up small spaces such as closets or bathrooms, and leave your clients speechless. Learn more at veluxusa.com/remodeler. I recently found out we still have a few free IBS tickets. I posted the link online. I actually just picked one up for Rachel. So if you guys need a free ticket to IBS, you can reach out to us, hello@moderncraftsman.co, and I'll send you the link. I'm not sure how many there are left, but I know that I just recently signed up for one. So reach out to us and I'll send you the link.
How's it going?
Pretty good, man. How are you?
Man, these are glaring bad. Good. Just it's about as nasty of a day as we get here in Nashville. So not a lot to do but hang out in the office. So
40's cold, huh?
Man, in Nashville, it's so wet and humid that it's just like chilly to the bone. I think now why is this not working? I just put this on Do Not Disturb because all of my stuff starts feeling crazy.
Is that you? My wife just texted me at the same exact time. Hold on, let me make sure.
Do Not Disturb, right? Focus on. I shouldn't be getting...
Yeah, it might not be you.
Hold on. It shouldn't be me. I got mine on now.
Maybe it's mine. Mine usually doesn't come through my computer, though, because I never put Do Not Disturb on.
Yeah,
People don't understand that about... We just had... like a cold spell, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago where it was down in the teens and then it got into single digits, but it was so dry that it was like fine. It wasn't terrible. Yeah. And then again, it can be like 30 to 40 and just moisture in the air, and it's so raw and bitter cold that I'm like, I'd rather take 7 with no relative humidity or moisture in the air any day of the week.
Yeah, cold is fine. We can dig. We've got some houses coming out of the ground. It's all fine. Frozen, no problem for an excavator. But this muddy, wet stuff, and we've got some architects in town doing design walks today, and I'm sure they're going to be short.
Probably. Are you from Nashville?
Nope. I moved here, over 30 years ago to go to Belmont. I'm 53. I visited Nashville when I was 15. I thought it was the coolest place ever. I said, I'm going to move here as soon as I can. And I moved here when I was 19.
That's cool. Where'd you move from?
I moved from Louisville, Kentucky, but I moved around a lot as a kid. I grew up mostly in Dallas, Texas, and then Southern Illinois. And then my parents moved back to Louisville, Kentucky, my junior year of high school. So I did my last 2 years of high school in Louisville, went to a couple other schools before moving here to Nashville, I guess after my sophomore year in college. And I love it. I'm not going anywhere.
You still love it? I mean, it's changed recently, right?
I love it. It's changed so much. And I was actually talking to a longtime, a native Nashvilleian, which there's not that many of them. And I said, man, Nashville, it's two different cities. It was super gritty and kind of homespun and local color when I moved here. And now it's, we got, sports teams and world-class restaurants and hotels. And I said, which do you like best? I like them both. I said, man, I like both cities. I loved gritty Nashville, but I also love having great restaurants, hotels, professional sports, the whole thing. And he said, I love New Nashville, which I was kind of surprised. A lot of the people who were here longer, they want to keep it to themselves. And, also, man, being in the building industry, it's in the top handful of best places that you could be, which you can't, I never undervalue that. I've tried to make some good decisions, but, I always say, if I was in Decatur, Illinois, it probably really wouldn't matter because the building in Decatur.
It's also like if you got in, you were there for so long beforehand. I think that a lot of people struggle where they're like, I want to be here, but now it's so unaffordable.
Yeah.
Where if you were there beforehand, it you want to complain about it, but at the same time, it probably has made you so much money that it's like, can I actually be upset about this?
Yeah, and if you get in, you get to stay in. The hardest part is getting in.
Right.
And if you've ever traveled to Nashville, there's a really hot area. Right after college, I bought a house in an area called 12 South. And they said, this is going to be the hottest neighborhood in Nashville. And I was like, okay. So I bought a house for $65,000.
Damn.
There is if something's terrible and basically uninhabitable, it's $1 million.
Yeah.
Right.
I bought a lot and then built a house I was going to move into, but ended up selling 5 houses down from that for $3.2 million. And, it's just a completely different world. So, but I love it. I love it.
It's bad when teardowns are $1 million plus.
Oh, yeah.
Good or bad, depending on your perspective.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're here. That's what we're doing in Boston. It's everything. I mean, we're buying, I'm watching people. I mean, our White Oak project was $1.9 million.
Yeah.
It's and teardown. I've been to Nashville twice. And once we went out to Leaper's Fork, which if anyone knows Leaper's Fork, they know how cool it is. And anyone that doesn't has no idea what they're missing out on.
Out there right now, the billionaires are pushing out the millionaires.
We were in the middle of nowhere and we're staying in this house. And I'll never forget, we always pull up Zillow and see the home valuations. And my wife's like, Nick, look at how much this house is worth. Yeah. I'm like, where are we? And in Leaper's Fork, it's they have this little tiny, it's not even a grocery store, but basically a grocery store.
I eat lunch there about once a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, and then the next door is a house that they converted into an 8-table restaurant. Yeah. And we went there and Mike Wolf and Kid Rock are sitting at the table next to us. Yeah. And then we leave there and we go and they're like, oh, you got to go over to the grocery store. I'm like, what are you talking about? and it turns into basically a band. Like they put a stage, they move all the gallon cans of beans out of the way, and everyone's there partying till 3 a.m. Kid Rock's on stage singing. It was such a bizarre place to be, but that's my experience with Nashville.
I've got a really good project out there. I like working out there. I mean, most of the time I've been in Nashville, I've literally worked in about a 6-mile radius, kind of around the urban core. And now we're starting to push out farther into Williamson County and Leapers. Leapers is about 40 minutes from my office. Yeah. And it's like people are building, when I get calls out there, it's like we're building a family compound. So we're building a house, party barn, sometimes agricultural buildings. This guy that we're working for now is doing sometimes I'll have to share once we get photography, like the gardens he's building, like they're just impeccable. And he's doing all this, it's not, I'm trying to think the standard he's trying to attain for his garden, but this pristine garden, and he sells vegetables out there and he does pigs. He's a former tech executive and now he's turned into like off the grid. We've got a solar array and 40,000 gallons of propane, and it's just amazingly beautiful property. So yeah, but Leapers, the thing about Leapers I think is funny when people have been there. It is beautiful, but it's completely curated.
Yeah. It's all
like they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. We were there, I think it was the first or second week of December. So they had their Christmas parade, which like the mayor of Leapers Fork, Tyler, is Kid Rock.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And he's just like, he's sitting on the front of a Cadillac with bull horns, like in the parade. And I mean, again, like we have no idea where we are. Like, we're just like, we end up, Matt Troyer was the one that put together this vacation. Yeah. And I'm like, where are we? Yeah. And it was like, then the next day it was like a food fest. The whole street shut down and everyone's like making barbecue. And I'm like, I don't know where we are, but this place is amazing. Like everything about it, like this is the not what I expected.
I don't know if you follow Steve and Brooke Gianetti. Steve Gianetti's a prominent architect that was on the West Coast, and then Brooke Gianetti, she has Patina is her interior firm, and then she opened up. But they visited Leapers. Gosh, it's probably about 12 years ago. They designed a project that's like the most expensive project in Tennessee. And they loved Leapers Fork so much, they moved from the West Coast. And she, in those little cute row of houses right there in kind of Main Street Leapers, she's got her boutique now. And then I haven't worked with them yet. But like they came there and fell in love with it and moved all their farm and animals and all their stuff to Leapers. So it's definitely a special place.
So funny how people who are like affluent and well off try and just create this simple lifestyle where it's like, I want to farm. And I saw that's what I was trying to look up online. I saw it online where it's like, you got to love farmers markets when you cut out the middleman, but like produce is still more money. Where it's like you're going straight to the source and now you're paying 2x what it would be. I feel like there's so many communities like that where I feel like that's everyone's dream, right? Is to like make enough that you can have this simple lifestyle. Yeah. And that that's what people do once they're
backwards thought process.
Like massively successful. It's like, all right, now I want to settle down and like live a quiet life.
Yeah. It's funny. We got a client call this week actually, and we were talking, it's very much a compound. He wants a massive garage. He goes, oh, and also I want a farm.
Yeah, that's like, you could just be poor and have a farm.
I was like, like how did you almost forgot about that? Like that's a big part. Brady, I'm going to read something that you sent to me in January because it's a big topic that I'd love to dig into. Yeah. But you wrote to me and said, I've been thinking about builders that aspire to work with elite architects. And I was thinking about how much time it has taken me. Obviously, everyone is unique and may never work with elite design teams or may work with them much faster than I did. But I thought I would share a couple from my business. Yep. And it's something that I think you and I have chatted on and off. Your message goes on, and I'll spare the poor job of reading it.
Probably typos.
But I think that is such an interesting topic that comes up constantly, and I want your feedback on it. And I'll start with something that you end up alluding to towards the end of your message about partnering with people that are at similar stages in your career.
Yeah.
And something very like, you look at Of Possible and us, we're basically have been in business at the same amount of time, and we're both trying to do the same thing, but on the opposite sides. We're both trying to build elite products, and they're struggling to get elite builders, and we want to build elite products, and we're struggling to get in with elite architects. And it's like, well, why don't we just work together and become one?
Yeah.
And and I think one of the strongest examples of that is like Olsen Kundig and Dowbuilt, and they have this this synonymous brand that they work together. But it's this challenge. Like I'll say from experience, it's I've chased some of the top architects in Boston for years and years and years and years and years, and it's like sometimes it just never comes to fruition, and for one reason or the other. Yesterday I had a conversation with one that I've been chasing for years. They have a project that needs a builder, and I was like, let us price it. And they're like, you're going to be too expensive. And I was like, I will find a way to make this work, because I want to work with you guys. And they would not allow me to price the job. Like, entire teams, like, no, like, we were instructed not to send you the drawings. Like, this is not the right project for you. So I'd love for you to share your story into like what kind of, for lack of better terms, catapulted you into the ability to build such, amazing projects with great architects.
Well, I think like most people, and, again, I'm 53. So you start thinking about what went right and what went wrong. And if I went back, what decisions would be validated as good at the time, and what things would I do different? So you just start kind of analyzing the good decisions you made and the bad decisions, and kind of try to put those in context. And so one thing I can tell you is nobody knew less about construction than I did. So in terms of like, when we look at construction, we look at 2 seasons where we go, hey, here's like my formative training. Like, I got to learn like what I'm doing, like how do I build things? So I didn't have a mentor. I'm not second generation. Like, you want to talk about the bottom of the bottom. Like, I used to say I didn't have electricians. I had guys that knew how to do electrical. Like, I had no subs that had insurance. Like, funny story, I went over to play. I had this guy that sold me a house. I was doing some flips at the time. And I said, hey, you know an electrician? Yeah, I know an electrician. His name's John. And John was 40 years old, lived with his mom. And I kept calling John's mom, and I could never get John to call me
John
back.
home?
So finally,
John!
Imagine like the Will Ferrell out of Wedding Crashers.
Yeah. Meatloaf.
Satin, robe. And so finally he goes, hey, man, he's at the bar at 2:00 every afternoon. So go over to Brown's Diner, walk in there and just tell him you're looking for John. He'll be there. So I go over there and I go, hey, I'm looking for John. This guy hits the ceiling. I mean, he comes out of his seat. I don't know if he had warrants or something, but like, I was like, oh, hey, no, sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. No, I'm a friend of Danny Murphy's. He just gave me your number. Like, he said, you know how to do electrical work. And truthfully, I would have been intimidated from having good subs, because it would expose how little I knew.
Yeah.
So me having somebody who sucked was a little bit comforting, because it didn't expose that I didn't have any idea what the hell I was doing. Now, I was a smart enough guy. So once I learned things, and I scaled up. I kind of started doubling. I started buying houses for 65, selling them for 135. And then I started buying houses for 200, putting a couple $100,000 into them and selling them for 750, 800 grand. So I did kind of get on the track. So then I was like, man, now here's one thing that I think is kind of key in my formation. I always thought of myself as a builder, not an investor.
How old were you when you started? Was it like right when you moved down there or later on?
I bought my first house at 25.
Okay.
Right out of college.
So it was like 20, 25 years ago.
Yep. And so then I was just kind of fixing up houses, just working on it. I mean, I did all the dumb stuff you can imagine, going to tile seminars at Home Depot and then laying my tile. Like, I'm telling you, like, as low-fi as you could possibly be. But when I did start kind of flipping these houses, I took a lot of pride in them. And I always say, I built every project to the best of my ability. Well, 25 years ago, I had a lot less ability I had now, but I did have the same sense of pride and like conviction of like, I want this to be good. So I even look at stuff that I did in like 2004, and I'm like way better now, but I'm not embarrassed. I don't go in and go, oh my gosh, sucks, so embarrassing. I can't believe. I go, better than most stuff you see out there now.
Yeah.
Not nearly as good as what I built now. And so a couple of the notes that I put for you guys, because I wanted to be prepared and offer some encouragement to you guys and your audience, is one of the things, even about working with architects, until you get in with the architects, all your effort needs to be around getting the client. Like, you want to get the client and then use the client to put together the design team.
Right.
So for me, much earlier in my career, I was like the rainmaker. I always kind of liken it to Rocky. Like, I was Sylvester Stallone. Like, I had to write my movie to be in my movie because nobody was going to let me be in the movie. And I was like, crap, I'm hitting these roadblocks. No architect who's established will even talk to me. The only way I'm going to get through this is I got to write my own movie. And so I would get the jobs and then use those as opportunities to open doors with architects. Hey, I got this project. I think you'd be a good fit. And through that conversation, not on the first conversation, but after we spent some time working through that project, I'd go, hey, man, I really enjoy working with you. What do you have that I could take a look at? And ask for the business, But I really focused on owning the client first, and then use that as my ticket to get in with the architects.
I think that's really important, and a lot of people lose sight of that. But like, for one, the reason you're saying, but then also I think that it allows you to create your system, your processes, follow your program and the client's program, rather than getting in bed with an architect that doesn't do things the way that you do. So like, if you can build enough of a rapport with them and say, this is how I operate, these are my systems, and how can we integrate you into my process, I think a lot of times ends up serving you more than you realize, because it's not like, hey, I'm going to throw a lead to an architect or wait for an architect to come for me for a lead. Now I have to play by their rules. I have to bid this according to how they want it done. It's like, no, these are my systems. These are my clients. This is how I operate. In order to be successful, how do you know? Because this is what I've done for so long.
And what you are describing there is what I actually call, I don't know if anybody ever used this term or if I made it up. I haven't heard anybody say it, but I call it the trust chair. There is somebody on that team. Sometimes it's the architect, the interior designer, or the builder that the client, like, they got the client's ear.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the person who originated the job. Sometimes I get the job and they get some kind of cool factor with the architect, and it's like, man, they just listen to whatever he says.
Yeah, you're sitting in the back of the car now.
I like to be in the trust chair, but I'm not always. You don't get to choose, but it's nice when you can kind of be in the trust chair. And so
it's funny. I just interviewed for a pretty big job, and the architect brought us in, but they just signed an agreement. It's an architect we've worked with in the past, and the client's like, so we understand that during the design process, the architect will be our lead communicator, but when, like, are you the lead communication during the build, or does that torch stay with the architect? And what I think we're all saying here is that, at least for me, we try to be involved really early, and we are typically, our most successful projects, and the majority of our projects are the client comes to us first, and then we assemble the team. And it supports what you're saying, Brady, is in the sense that you want to work with an architect. Like, you bringing the architect to the table is your best way in order to essentially formulate that. But I had told them, I'm like, no, truthfully, even in the design process, we're going to be the one carrying the torch. You're going to be communicating with the architect the most during the design phase. Like, that's where all of your communication is funneling to, where it's not coming through us. But ultimately, we're the guiding light. We have to be the one that says, hey, that's going to be over budget. We're trying to get to a $5 million price point and an 18-month build schedule, and what you're designing doesn't fit those constraints. So, like, we're the one that has to get you back on track. And then, of course, under construction, we want the architect to be involved in CA, but we are ultimately we continue with the torch, down to the completion of the project. And that same exact question came up today in the interview I was in prior to this, which made me an hour late to this podcast. But when I explained it, he's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I obviously want this to be designed a particular way, but I really want someone to be, in charge. Like I want to rely on someone that is going to help me get to ultimately the end result.
Right.
And, and on the flip side, thinking about every project that we've ever been brought, whether the architect brings us a job or a client comes to us with a completed set of drawings, I can't think of one project that we've ever got at that stage ever. Like it's, we price the job. Wow, you're $2 million over budget. It's like, I'm not over budget.
Yeah.
You designed a project that's $2 million more expensive than you thought.
Well, you're getting to, there's a little bit different thing there, but I get 100% of the jobs that I bid because I don't bid any jobs I don't have. And so that's a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, right.
A different program, but
I like the way you said that.
Yeah.
Like,
so,
just
like my closing rate's
confidence.
Yeah. And so on that though, one of the things that about getting this, I think is really important is that architects, it doesn't matter how big they are. Patrick Ahern is still a small business. Mm-hmm. He might be an iconic East Coast architect. He is still a small business at the end of the day. And so these guys are patronizing people that also patronize them. And so one of the things that is really important to me is, and it sounds like you have it, because I had questions about your relationship with Possible, because you do need to build this first and foremost with people that can help you succeed, not somebody who's just iconic, because one iconic build is not going to change your life. I built an iconic house in 2012. I've been told it's the number one house on Pinterest. I thought it was about $7.5 million in 2012. It probably cost me $15 million to build it now, maybe $20 million. And I thought, okay, I just punched my ticket. I proved what I can do. I'm in. I was not in.
Damn it.
And so, so you get the iconic build, but then, so also with these guys and some people I've had real conversations with, again, I'm pretty collaborative and like play nice guy, but like if somebody can't handle a lead, they get no leads from me. I called an architect that I like, and I was like, dude, you're getting no more calls from me. You don't know how to handle a lead. So for instance, I've got a good lead on a job, kind of secured it, tethered it to me a little bit. I go, hey, here's some people I would like to introduce you to. So then they go over and introduce the person. Sometimes people will go, hey, what are some other builders that I should be talking to instead of Brady? Now, let me reverse that question. I'll tell you what I say, because sometimes architects send people to me and they go, hey, I'm not necessarily married to the architect. Who would you recommend? And I say, you know what, man, Nick Schiffer was so gracious to share my name with you. I don't think I would be very gracious back there's other architects out there. You're free to interview them. But out of my relationship with Nick, I'm not going to provide this.
Yeah.
Because I just think it's now occasionally somebody's out there talking to everybody. You hear it. You hear 4 builders that go, man, I got this great lead. They're all talking about the same house. If I get that, if the same thing's happening with architects, I'll let them know right off the bat, hey, man, just so you know, 3 other architects called me about that job. I don't know where it's going to land. But if I know that's not the case, I'd rather lose the job and save my relationship with the architect than the architect think that, I hung on to the job and they lost it. So if you can't handle the lead, then you're not getting any leads from me. So also,
did it? I don't mean to interrupt you. At what point in your career did you have enough confidence to do that? Because that's not always the case.
Well, I got to a point where I got really frustrated because, once you start having success and people start calling you and asking you how you do it, and go, oh man, the red carpet. It's like, man, it's been harder more than it's been easy.
Yeah.
Now it's in a minute. I'll read this quote to you. I was going to say when I read this to you, but I'll read it to you. And this is exactly my story. I saw this on Instagram the other day. It said, it takes years, then it all happens at once. Every sacrifice, every small win, every late night working alone, they lead up to that moment. They all count, but you can't see what they're building until it's done. An overnight success takes 1,000 nights.
Yeah.
I felt like I was failing the whole time. In 2017, I went to the guy that owns my lumber yard and I said, Ray, I can't do it anymore. I think I'm going to quit. I'm not getting the projects I want. For whatever reason, I don't know if I'm too middle class. I just reek of like middle classness, but I'm like the good architects don't accept me. I'm just not getting there. And I said, man, I might do something else. I might like build decks or like be the world's biggest drywall contractor, like just something. And, but I was broke. I had a really tough customer and I was like, man, I've been broke and I've had tough customers. It's just hard to be broke and have tough customers. And so I was about to quit. And I had seen my pipeline fill up before. Like one time I had like these 5 great jobs, which we're all trying to get to, by the way. We're trying to move from like good build to like good building business. Like the business is when that pipeline you can just keep refilling that pipeline. And that's when you can staff up. That's when it really happens. But all of us are going, I got a good build. Well, now I got something that it's not my life's work, but I got employees. I was still kind of doing that. And I thought I had these 5 builds and I was like, finally it's happening, man. Like all my dreams are coming true. No, I didn't get to build any of them. I did not get to build any of them. Like, here we go again. So I remember I was sitting in my office and I had like 5 really good leads. And I said, man, I feel good. I'm going to get 2 of these. Man, if I get 3, like game on. My staff was still small, like a couple of people, we were just kind of in that, like get a good project every now and then do whatever else in the meantime. Well, I ended up getting all 5. By the time I got all 5, I was just the guy. I mean, overnight, I'm like, people are like, well, Brady's a $10 million guy. Don't call Brady unless you have $10 million. And it's never changed. And I got my first bank of $10 million jobs. And I was like, well, I don't know. Was that just a one run? Like was this like playing the slot machines and I hit the jackpot once and then I bankrupt. And then like, I just kept being able to refill that pipeline every time. So
I want to go back. I want to go back to that exact moment, but before, when you lost the 5 jobs, the ones that you didn't get, like what was, what changed after that? Like, obviously you want to give up, you want to go be a big drywall contractor, but like to go from that to then having a potential pipeline of 5 great jobs, like what were you doing that led from one to the other?
Well, there's a few things. I mean, even prior to that, I would hear accolades like, oh, Brady's the best builder in Nashville. And I was like, well, if I am, what's it worth?
Yeah.
Like, what's this title even worth? Listen, I always made a good living. And that's what I would even tell your people. Sometimes before you're living the dream, you go, hey, dude, is your business where mine is? Maybe not. You made $300,000 last year. Like, who are you feeling sorry for? Like, that puts you in like the upper tier of like wage earning Americans. And sometimes when you see people that are doing better, it feels like not fulfilling, but I was still making hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I still wasn't having that. I wasn't building projects that I aspired to build. I wasn't being accepted by the peers that I wanted to be accepted by. So, and I want to go back to something Tyler said. So, one was I let jobs just be out on the street. Like I didn't have the pre-con agreement to like tether things to me. And people that get amazed by the pre-con agreement, I could not get hired doing free estimates. Like I couldn't get hired. Who cares? You think you're doing them a favor and you diminish yourself so bad. And then one guy was like, people would do it and then go, oh yeah, somebody told me I'd be a fool not to talk about so-and-so. And then they're the bright, shiny face. They don't think about the year you spent trying to just, say yes to everything. So you got it. So when I got out of that game was number one. Now you had a question about when I had the confidence. I don't even know if it's confidence more than it was frustration. There's this guy who's my biggest advocate right now, and he's my strongest professional relationship. I've been working with him for about 5 years. I still hadn't got a meaningful job, and most of the work we had together was from me, not from him. But every time they would get one of their flagship, publishable works, I'd go, hey, what's going on? What's going on with that job? Oh yeah, man, that already had a builder attached. Oh, okay. And I took him at face value. And I said, he's an honest guy. And then I see another hey man, I saw you got another killer job. Who's doing that? Oh, builder attached. So then I was talking to one of my subs, and he mentioned this particular architect building his house and another builder building it. And I was like, wait, hold on, man.
Thanks.
Okay. So I went to him, and I just went, and it wasn't even out of confidence. I had to know who my allies were. I thought this guy was my ally, and I went to him, and it actually made our relationship better. I went to him, I said, hey, listen, I hear that so-and-so is building your home. Now, I know because we have some subs in common, what he's working on. And I know that I've given you guys much more work than he's been able to give you. So if you intend to work with him, I either need to know why he's more qualified to build this house than me. And if he made a great argument, then I'd go, okay, he's more qualified. But I know he wasn't. My body of work was already much higher level. Or why you're more interested in preserving his relationship more than you are in preserving mine. I thought we're allies. If we're not, I understand. I need to go find another ally. I can't keep investing in this relationship hoping it's going to pay off, and then it doesn't. And he was like, man, and I think we've all done this, by the way. He said, you know what, man? One day I got run in my mouth about some of my personal problems. I had my set of plans. He kind of looked at it. I wished I'd never shown him. He's like, you're absolutely right. I need to call that guy and tell him I'm working with you. And so, but it wasn't out of confidence. It was out of like this thing going, hey, man, if this guy's not my ally, I got to find out, because I had another relationship prior to that. You know, I had a guy that I was going to try to build my business with, Nick, like you are with Possible. I realized this guy didn't want to do it. Mm. I was like, hey, he's the only guy that I know that shrunk. He had 3 designers in 2010. I think he's down to 1. And I was like, I don't think this guy's going to do it. And I had hitched my wagon so closely with him, and people were like, oh, Brady's that guy. He works with that guy. Oh yeah. And I think other guys didn't want to work with me. And I had to like get away from it and go. I mean, man, that train was stuck in reverse and I was hitched to it. It was a big problem.
The frustration thing is a really good point as well. And I think it's very relatable for a lot of people, because it takes that frustration to be able to surmount the fear that you have of, what if I do this? Like, what if I say no? What if I put this sub on the line and he's like, you know what, I'm not going to work for you anymore. You were too concerned with, hey, this is my sub. This is the relationship I have. I had something like when I moved into pre-construction and not doing free estimates, it was the same thing. I was just so frustrated with spending the time for people to not even give me so much as a thank you, that I was speaking to somebody down, he's a builder in Louisiana, and he's like, why don't you just tell people that you're not going to competitively bid jobs? And up until that point, I never even entertained how to do that. It was just so frightening to me to say no to people that I wouldn't entertain that. But it got to the point where I was just like, I'm either going to stop doing this or I'm going to tell people no. And when I finally did that, it's the same thing as you. Like, my business and my lifestyle changed. And like, I still had to figure it all out. It wasn't like I said, I'm going to stop bidding jobs and my life and my business changed. I had to figure out how to navigate that path. But if it weren't for being just so overly frustrated and taxed with the industry as a whole, I don't know if I would have made that shift.
I wish everybody would. I mean, you know, I'm in a Builder 20, and both here in town and then my Builder 20, I kind of mentor a lot of young guys. And they're just blown. I can't do it. I can't do it. And I go, you can do it. And you know how much time I spend talking about it? 0. Mm-hmm. It's nobody brings it up. It's no big deal. I go, hey man, it's really nice to meet you. You know, hey, Nick, Tyler, great to meet you guys. Listen, if you want to go to the next step, let me give you a copy of my pre-construction agreement. And they all sign it.
Yeah.
They all, I mean, everybody.
Hold on. Because I want to really focus on that for a second, because I think what you just said is incredibly important to the process, is that it's not a optional thing. It's just like, yeah, this is the next step. And I think that, you know, anyone that's listening to this, like, regardless if you do pre-construction or not, you know, there's so much that we frame to a client that it's, hey, here's here's an option, like here's an optional.
Well,
Like this is
that
the
option just is
decision.
based on fear, right? You're afraid that you
Of
potentially
course.
that client might walk away, so you're going to be like, "Well, if you don't want to, we could do this." Or like, I think that if you are either frustrated enough or you have enough confidence in your business and your systems that this is the next step, and it's very black and white, right? It's very polarizing. It's either you take the next step and sign the pre-con, or you don't.
Well, because we deceive ourselves and we think that not getting a no is a yes. And how many times have we sat there and go, okay, I'm still in the mix on this job. They're still sending me emails. And probably if you were to really be honest with yourself, you go, this isn't really feeling like a good job. But just because they didn't tell you no, you're like hanging on to it. Because sometimes it's all you got. I mean, we're sitting there, you're fighting that emotional battle. Is my business where it wants to be? Are people responding to my product? And what I tell people is there's two good outcomes and there's two good outcomes and one bad outcome. Getting a great job is a great outcome. Like that's what we're all here for. Not wasting time for people who aren't going to hire you is a good outcome.
Yeah.
But people don't see that. And I go, oh, you didn't spend 20 hours on somebody who was just out there kicking tires. Like that's a great outcome. And not getting a bad job is also a good outcome.
So to that point, like, and I think to tie it into something you said before, it's like, how can I complain? I made a few $100,000 this year, right? That still puts me in like the top few percent of the people, in like the general economy. But that $300,000 looks a lot different when you're providing all of those 20 hours of unpaid time versus, hey, that $300,000 is me working 40 hours a week and not 80 hours a week, right? And I think that when you move away from that and you structure your business to say, okay, I made a few $100,000 and I worked 40 hours a week, that's a lot better than what most people are doing to make $200,000-$300,000, where they're working 80 to 100 hours a week, you know?
Yeah, that's why you should be paid. And there's lots of ways to structure it, but there's all kinds of like psychodynamic things that happen in terms of like scarcity. Like there's all these triggers it does for people. So I could spend 2 hours, Steve, talking about that, like scarcity, confidence, like it just hits all those endorphins when people are trying to make a buying decision.
Do you sell scarcity? Like, is that something that's in your process?
Well, I don't really sell it as scarcity, which you're going to touch on another topic I've been thinking a lot about lately. But I do say, like, we only take as much work as we have project managers. We're very heavy on our supervision. And so when we're full, we either have to hire people or turn down work.
Yeah. Well, that's selling scarcity. Like if you tell them, like, if I have 4 project managers, I'm only taking on 4 projects, like, the people are more apt to being like, well, how many do you have going on right now? It's like, I have 3. It's like, I need to be 4.
I feel like it's less of a marketing tactic and just more as matter of fact, though, right?
Yeah,
like
I'm not saying it's a marketing perspective, but it's like, it is part. I mean, Brady, to your point, like it is part of the reason people buy.
Yeah.
When it's like when there's only certain amount of them available, like people are more apt to make a decision, good or bad.
Yeah. So. Yes. But I also I do more work. I probably do triple the work of my 2 biggest competitors.
Wow.
And but again, that's great, whatever. But I also tell my customers, I have to sell that in a way like, hey, our strength is our size. That's why we can provide all these extra services. I can't provide the same level of service if I'm only building 2 houses. So yeah, we usually have, 7 or 8 houses in production in various stages, but that's why we can provide you this expensive technology that's prohibitive to most residential contractors. That's why we have guys that can work for us exclusively. That's why we can maintain homes. That's why we can have a person in the office that's handling all your specs and selections and interacting with your design team, is because if not, that's why there's not some guy trying to eat a ham sandwich and order your windows on his lunch break, is because we're doing it. So I think it is important to not your size be what your ego is, but you have to communicate why being bigger is a value for your customer and not a liability.
Well, Nick, what was the vision? What lumberyard did you envision when he said that? Because I was like, I'm pretty sure I was thinking of one salesman at my lumberyard eating a ham sandwich
Yeah,
while you said that.
ham sandwich. And so, that's the thing about it is the, that's what I'm selling for. That's the value I'm trying to communicate. But that agreement, if anybody wants to know, like, what was the one thing, that's always the one thing. Like, I don't have to go, oh, is this customer, or my dad's dean of the law school at Vanderbilt, so all he sends, I have none of that. Like, I have none of that. Mm-hmm. But that doing that pre-con agreement. Now imagine, by the way, guys, imagine if you went in to interview an attorney and like you had something that was really important and you needed to know that you had like the most, sophisticated legal mind on your team. And you got done telling about all your problems. And then he said, okay, well, it's nice to meet you. Give me a call if there's anything else I can do for you. You'd be like, yes, I'm in trouble. That's why I'm here. So it'd be confusing if he didn't say, you'd be relieved if he said, hey, here's my retainer agreement. You'd go, oh, thank God. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What a great way to picture that, because like you think people are calling you because they want to build a house, and it's like you give them all this, you have this great conversation, and then people just hang up. It's like they weren't bored. They weren't calling because they wanted to talk about building a house. They're calling because they're trying to understand if you can build their house and solve their issue.
And I'll tell you something. I know you guys know Sean Van Dyke, and he told me this like 10 years ago. Sean came over, like, he's from Knoxville. He was in Nashville, and we've met a few times. And he was like, Brady, because I think I prided myself on my like consulting mentality. Like, I like to riff about my knowledge and my insight. He was like, you are in a sales transaction right now, and if you don't quickly find out if this is a customer for you, you're going to die.
Yeah, you're wasting so much time, like opportunity cost alone.
Yes. And so I'm not trying to be rude, but like, if I want the work, I'm asking for the work right then. Like, and I don't have some tightly scripted. I have a few things that I like the way it sounds. They're articulate. If you've sat through a sales conversation with me, you might hear some of the same vernacular, but I'm bringing out that pre-con. I'll tell you something, by the way, I think you guys will appreciate. This is like kind of a big win for me. I was really excited about. There's a really incredible, probably the biggest thing that's getting ready to launch in Nashville is a subdivision called Wiley out towards Leapers Fork. And it's 60 lots. The developers and architect I have a very good relationship with. It's all set up to be very successful for me. It's like Fortune 500 CEOs moving in. It's like pristine. It's like a BlackBerry farm, if you've ever heard of a BlackBerry farm, but like full-time residents. So I got a call about a project. Architect came in town. Homeowners came into town, came and saw some of my work. They were very, they liked the work. Now, you guys have probably been in a sales presentation where people are already using all kinds of buying language. Oh, yeah, well, we want you, or when we start this, man, we want you to know we want to do. They're already telling you that you've been hired just by their vernacular. These people were polite, but I wasn't getting any of that. I wasn't getting any of that language like they are mentally already hired me. Well, I get done. We met on site. It's one of the very few times I met first on a project instead of at my office. And so a couple days after the presentation, I just said, hey, and they're building 2 houses, by the way. They're building a family compound. Like this is north of numbers I've been quoting. I mean, this might be $15, $20 million project for me. And so I said, hey, send me an email. Hey, great spending time with you. Pleasure to show you my work. You're lovely. Hey, want to attach a copy of my I sent a pre-construction agreement and a retainer request. They signed it and sent it to me. They never even said they were going to hire me. Now, that might sound, that was probably the most aggressive I've been. But if they didn't want to sign it, they just would have called and said, hey, we enjoyed meeting you. We're just not quite there yet. And I said, hey, no problem. I just wanted you to know how I work.
Yeah, here's my next step.
They just signed it with me. That job's off the street. That job is tethered to me now. And I don't want that job floating around and somebody else hears about it, so they just signed the check.
Was it around 2017 when you implemented this, like after you were that frustrated, or were you doing pre-con and everything prior to that?
I had done it a little bit.
Yeah.
Michael Stone. I had Michael Stone, who wrote Markup and Profit, a Contractor's Guide. And I think he consulted me a little bit in 2010. And he was like, I was like, nobody, I can't do it. I already can't get work. I can't have another obstacle. And he's like, people have been telling me that for 30 years. And so I'd kind of played with it, but like, I don't even know exactly when I implemented. I'd probably played with it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like when I was finally like, I'm planting my flag and I'm not doing it unless you pay me. And I even went retroactively, by the way. I won't mention his name, but I'm building a house currently for a A-lister country music star. I've been talking to him since 2015.
Woo!
And he's redesigned the house 3 times. He's a great guy. I love him. But Jeff Dungan's the architect. I love Jeff. You want to be on his jobs. They always get great press. And so the house got redesigned. Oh, I'm not going to build it. Oh, I can't spend that much money on a house. And just kept going back and forth. Finally, I told the guy, hey, I'm not price this again. I don't think you're going to build this house. I don't want to waste any more time. And he's like, no, I'm going to build it. I was like, well, then send me a check. And he did. Now, did that make him build the house? I don't know. But I spent years because he's famous. I wanted to be in his good graces. I wanted to make sure that they didn't go, hey, Jeff, get somebody else in here. But I just said, I'm not doing it again. And if he would have said, well, I'm calling somebody else, I said, okay. But again, I don't know that is what pushed it over the edge. But I wasn't doing it again. I'm like, I don't do that anymore. And I don't believe you're going to build it. And if you are, then you won't mind writing me a check.
Is Kid Rock a country singer?
No, it's not good. We're hoping the guy will let us,
Kid Rock's not designing a house since 2015 either.
Yeah.
He's probably not A-list either. Sorry, Kid Rock.
He's pretty A-list around here. But, I don't know what that was, but I even retroactively just said, I went back. And one other little anecdote, there's a guy in my builder group, and I just been like, he's a smart guy. He does good work. He just can't. It's too insecure on the pre-construction or the asking for a pre-construction agreement. And so I love to try to kind of solve these puzzles. And so he said, man, I've got like 5 estimates I have to do. I don't even have time to do them. And I don't even know. And I said, you know what? This is kind of what I would recommend. Why don't you call these clients and say, hey, listen, I need to be transparent and honest with you. I've overcommitted myself. I not only don't have enough time to build the projects that have been brought to me, I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time to estimate the projects that I have. I understand that I told you I could provide you a free estimate. I'm gonna have to backtrack on that. I'm not going to be able to honor that promise. I'll tell you what, I'm going to offer the people that want to pay me to do an estimate, then I'm going to do it. And I guess if everybody pays me, I'll have to decide which of the people that I'm going to have to disappoint. And I coached him into, you've already agreed to do it free. Let's go back and tell them, hey, we're not going to be able to honor that. And that was a reasonable, hey, say if everybody wants it, I'll have to tell somebody else, like I can't even do a paid estimate now. And so, man, I just spend so little time on it now. And it's so it's changed everything so much. Like nobody can force shame me out of anything.
Guys, quick break from the podcast. Make sure you head over to moderncraftsman.co. Scroll all the way to the bottom, sign up for our newsletter. That's where you get all of the additional information about the show, behind the scenes, everything we have going on. Make sure you sign up for that newsletter. We'll keep you in the know with everything Modern Craftsman. Well, I think it's there's so much there, but the speed is so important because, like I said a few minutes ago, they're calling because they have a problem. The problem is they want to build a house and they need to find someone to do it. Mm-hmm. And it's like we spend this, we talk about this process in which like these initial calls and like, okay, what are next steps? Like every client says, okay, what are next steps? And it's like, instead of just saying, here, I'll send you my pre-construction agreement, it's like, oh, we should meet in person. We should walk the site. We should get to know each other. It's like, they're ready. They reached out because they're ready to do the project. Make it as simple and as possible. And it's, I've told this story before, but I got lunch with a builder local to me, and we were chatting about just like the industry and how competitive it is. And he was telling me about this story about he had this giant job, big job. been talking to the client, and he was like, and I was putting together a rough budget, and I was going to present it to them the next week and then follow up with a contract. And I got a call on Monday that this XYZ builder got wind that this project was out there. He drove to the guy's house. Oh, the guy opened the door. He shook his hand. He told him who he was. He told him, what he's trying to do and roughly what it would cost. And he had an agreement in his hand. The guy signed it, and the job was gone. And it's like, I mean, that's aggressive. But like, but besides the point, like the lesson there is like the client just wants action, like wants to move. We want to move. We want to move. We want to move. Like, don't delay that process, because it's just, the more they sit there and simmer, it's like, okay, what's going on? Like anytime a client asks for an update, like any part of the process, it's like, I immediately like, all right, we're not doing our job. And you think about like, you like the most common is when it's under construction, like looking for some update. But talk about it from the sales perspective. It's like, our pipeline, in the last couple of weeks has been insane. And I've been trying to be very intentional with getting people quickly through it. But sitting here, even in this first hour chatting with you, it's like, man, I should just be sending these guys agreements now, because half of them I know want to move. They want to move, and they want to get going.
I mean, you don't do anything, and you could be saying that you're depriving your paying clients. If somebody's a paying client, then they're a paying client. But if they're not a paying client, shouldn't your attention be devoted to the people that are paying for your time? I mean, I would say, I don't know that I would say it's a hard integrity issue, but I want to go, hey, people are paying for my time.
Yeah.
I volunteer my time to others. That's not really equitable to the people. I got a question for you guys, by the way, that kind of will make you think. How old are you, Nick?
I'll be 37 next week.
All right. Do you know any builders that are wildly successful there's some examples, but like, I think sometimes people forget how long it takes. Like,
I don't forget how long it takes. I balance my life decisions on the fact that I have no idea how long I'm going to live in this planet. So I want to be as aggressive as I can to accomplish what I want. But also, like, yeah, I mean, that puts me on the verge of anxiety, on a pretty regular basis. So I have to balance that with like, all right, I'm 37, like I'm doing okay. I've made some really great decisions in my life. I've had some really highs and certainly some, terrible lows, but this is part of the process. I don't discredit that. Like Jeff Sweener said that too. Like he was laughing when I was talking about losing work to old guys with gray hair. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, I'm glad you are, because when I was your age, I lost everything to those guys.
Yeah.
So I understand that. And I totally respect it. It's just, it's my nature. And I think a lot of people's nature is to like break that stigma. Be like, it doesn't have to be like, I can do this before I get gray hair.
I 100% agree. I don't think the old regime exists anymore where I thought, hey, I got to wait till like, the next guy up. Like I have to wait for the guys ahead of me to retire or die. I don't believe in that, but I also believe that, it does take time. I mean, if you even think about, I wrote this on the life cycle of a job. So let's just say you got a job and you're very technical. So let's just go, Nick's got all the technical expertise that he needs to be successful at the highest level of custom home building. Okay. So we'll accept that. Well, then you get your job. You have a year of pre-construction and design, 18 months to 2 years of pre-construction design. You might get to exploit some of the assets during the build, but like before that job, before even the person that hired you for that job might be able to recommend you for another job, might be 3 years away.
Yeah.
It's hard to go, hey, I'm going to start this job and then have 3 more lined up, like while this is building. Like it just takes a little bit to get around that life cycle and do it. So even once you have, and just think how much time it takes to have that technical knowledge to where you can actually do it. And I think some of these guys who don't have it and think that they're just going to Instagram their way into that opportunity, they think this is a sales business and not a performance business. dude, it's game over. Like you go in and, I mean, you build somebody a $10 million albatross, game over. Like your batting average has to be so freaking high. You have to be so financially stable that you got a problem and your name's on the line and it's 150 grand. You don't even have to think about it. You go.
Yeah.
It's
I think that's the big difference. Even as you get older, it's almost as if everything that you tried to put out in the world and convince everyone, including yourself, of what's the right way to do things actually starts to pan out, right? I feel like from 25 to 40, you're trying to will yourself into every situation and best practices and success. And in our industry, I think that it takes time, and that while you can bring a lot of money in through your business and you could probably make a lot of money, you're probably also paying a lot of money either through lessons learned or just getting your business off the ground. And I think it probably takes a good 15 or 20 years to get to a point where you're not just talking the talk, you're actually walking the walk, and you have the systems in place and you have some financial backing that your money's making you money and you're successful in business. And I think at that point, when you stop trying as hard and it's a little less talk and it's more action, I think that it makes it a lot easier to survive in this industry. And I think that you have the confidence to tell people no and understand. I have the experience to understand that I can tell you no, and I'm confident that I'll be fine because the next job is going to be the one that I'm waiting on. And I think when we're younger, it's too scary. It's too frightening. We don't have the experience or the confidence in ourselves and our business to understand that this is all going to work out. Like, we probably don't have the systems in place to be 100% confident that it is. And that's one of the things that I noticed, even, from being 25 to being 39, is just me understanding that I'm going to be able to work through all of this. It's going to work out, and that I have my systems dialed so much more now that I'm guaranteeing I'm making money on all of my projects, and I'm not working 2x to make 1x.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree with all that. And so I think, I know several guys, I know you're doing the single family home stuff more so, Nick, that I think that are kind of in that and get frustrated. And I don't think there's a pecking order. Nobody gets to pick your timing. I just think that, I wrote down another couple things. I love stand-up comedy. We have the hottest stand-up right now.
Yeah, you do.
Nate Bargatze. So Nate Bargatze is everywhere right now. He's on
Super Bowl commercials.
Super Bowl commercials, sold out Nissan, Bridgestone twice. Like, this guy is everywhere. Well, he was a funny guy in his 20s. Like, do you think the guy wasn't funny at 25 or at 37? The guy was freaking hilarious. But he had to be out there learning his craft. So he had to learn stand-up comedy, right? Well, then he had to build a following. He had to go out and make fans. So it goes from comedy clubs. Well, imagine this guy. I think I looked at Nate's 45, and I heard a couple things. I think 2 years ago, Nate, I might have this wrong, but within the last several years, Nate had approximately $450,000 in income. Nate Bargatze grossed $82 million last year. Imagine if Nate Bargatze said, I'm still doing the same old smoky comedy clubs. This isn't working out for me. And he quit at 40. He's the biggest comedian in the United States right now. I also thought about that with Theo Von. Theo Von was on a nationally televised famous show in his 20s. But that wasn't enough to launch what his dream was at being in acting and comedy. The guy toiled for 20 years, probably not getting the respect that he thought he deserved, not getting cast in movies, not getting sitcoms. He got to interview the president of the United States. He was considered so culturally relevant that the president of the candidate for the Republican Party for the president of the United States appeared on his podcast. But he's in his 40s. What happens when those guys, so you guys that are in your 40s, they're like, and again, I hope it happens for you. I'm not saying, hey, grasshopper, stick around, or it's not.
Oh yeah, you put the time and it's guaranteed to happen.
Just don't quit before the whole world opens up to you. That's all I'm trying to say.
And I think, speaking from experience, and I've been pretty open about 23 and 2024 being really challenging years, but like, there's been a lot of times where I have to remind myself of that, where it's like right now is what feels like the impossible lowest of the low. This is the most challenging thing I've ever done. It's I should just give up and do something simpler. Like, why am I doing this? Like having conversations with Tyler offline, like I don't understand. Like maybe I never thought like maybe I'm too middle class, but like when you said that earlier, it's like, yeah, I've had very similar thoughts. Like maybe I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And maybe this is all just, it is way harder than I thought it would be. And, but I always come out of that like telling myself, I'm like, no, this is when everyone else gives up.
Exactly.
This is the moment that it's like, all right, here's your test. Yep. Like, see if you can make it through this, because if you can make it through this, then, there's something on the other side for you. If you don't, and you give up, hey, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. Like, not a big deal. Like, you're no less of a man or what. Like, it's just, you gave up. And like most people do. But if you don't want to be like most people, it's like, see if you can push through that. And I think that is what, I mean, at least for me, like that's what consistently pushes me to continue to fight through adversity and fight through the challenges that sometimes just completely seem like totally unreasonable. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no reason it should be this hard. Like why can't I figure this out?
Nothing will humble you like this business.
Oh man,
including me. So like, don't all these people just think that I just so confident in every situation. I mean, some days you go home, you're like, why would somebody buy shoestrings from me? That's the nature of it, man. And it's, by the way, I say this all the time, and I see people just like almost like take a deep breath. Dude, this is the loneliest business in the world. Mm-hmm. It is the loneliest business. It's gotten less lonely. I found more ways to kind of connect with people and peers, and I have great relationships with like, so even my vendors are like really good friends of mine. But man, like when it's lonely and then you get that, you get your ass just absolutely handed you on something and you just feel, so I'm experiencing the same thing. So I don't, there's no reason, I've been doing it longer. And I have those same days too. You got to find ways to get through it. But that's where, when you're passionate about something, that's what keeps you doing it. Because this other stuff that may even be easier to make money, if all I wanted to do is make money, there's easier ways to make money in construction than what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Or in anything.
Right.
But I'm like, well, it's fulfilling. Like, I love taking something that's just a piece of paper and then walking in and going, it exists. And every day I saw it get a little bit more into reality. Like, that's what I like,
You know what I think, the loneliness, I think, is oftentimes driven by the fact that when it sucks or when you don't have your shit together, you really can't talk about that. You can't tell someone like, hey, I don't have my shit together right now, because why would someone then turn around and be like, all right, well, let me give you a cool $1 million to try to do my house.
Yeah.
And it's like, so you constantly have to be like, in an optimistic state, regardless of what's happening behind the scenes. I think I mentioned this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, but we were interviewing for a small job, and the architect was going through his questions, like live in front of the client, like going through, and he goes, oh, I got one more question. Based on your current state of your business, how financially stable are you right now? And I was like, what a question. Like, and then the client laughs and he goes, no one's ever going to say, oh, I'm in a terrible financial spot.
Right.
So, and I was like, no, we're fine. Like, we're good. He goes, all right, check. And I'm like, but that, I mean,
that's really weird.
It was so, I found it so weird.
I probably wouldn't have done it there, but I probably would have go, I'll show you my balance sheet if you show me yours.
Yeah. And I remember being like, am I like, I remember going through the motion of like, if I wasn't fine, like, would I have said no? Or like, and if I wasn't, would I have lost a job based on that information? I was like, this is just, it was such a weird question. But it really made me realize, like, even when it's shit, like you still have to put this facade on. Like, I know what I'm doing. I'm good. Business is great. Like, I'm not here trying to sell you a job because I'm trying to save my life. Like, I'm here because I want to build a cool project and work with great people.
Yeah, I mean, we are very financially, and we have a very strong balance sheet. Like with our production, we have to keep quite a bit of money in working capital, and then we do good on our reserves. But there are ways, like again, if somebody, I wouldn't say, you know, the same. That's even kind of internally. I wouldn't want to brag to my customer on how much money we keep on hand, like they have some reason to not pay us in a timely way, or
it's like, oh, you get $2 million
or
in
that
the
I'm
bank.
paying them too much money.
Yeah,
like I wouldn't.
You're making 6% of my deposit. Use that money.
Yeah. Which, by the way, something that you mentioned in talking about doing this with architects, I thought I'd mention, man, one time when I planted my flag, I needed work and I'd called the architect and asked him for some projects, and he agreed to take me to an interview. And so then we're interviewing, and like he's there with the client, and I'm sitting there in my head having this internal battle, like, okay, man, I like planted my flag on this. I'm not doing anything without a pre-con. But then on the other hand, like out of need, I kind of asked him to bring me here. So is he going to be like, why is Brady shaking me client down for money?
Yeah.
He doesn't even have work. Like he asked me to bring him, and now he's 50, an hour into this thing, and like asking for a check. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And I said, hey, man, I don't know who else you've interviewed. It might be a little bit different from some of the other people you've talked to. I really believe that the biggest asset I have is our consultation. We're not in a competitive environment. We just want to give you the information, make best decisions. And to do that, I have a pre-construction agreement. And the architect didn't say anything. And the guy was an attorney. He was like, absolutely. I get it. I'm an attorney. We have the same thing. So then I walk outside with the architect, and he goes, I go, man, and this might be a way for you guys to take this back to the architects. When they go out and get a bunch of bids, then what does the architect do? The homeowner goes to the architect and goes, hey, man, can you sift through these 3 bids and tell me? He was like, hell no. Do you think I want these people to get 5 bids? Then they call me and they want me to Frankenstein these 3 bids that aren't on standard documentations. They don't have enough notes. It's what the builder thinks it is, because there's not specs and selections. It's just everybody's opinion of cost. He's like, I hate it. So on the opposite side, I would probably go to the architects first and go, hey, man, why don't you just let me get into this consulting relationship with them instead of you getting put in a position of trying to sift through 3 bids that have no relevance to each other and making informed decisions about 3 contradictory pieces of information. Like, I think you can cut that off, get the architect advocating for you before the architect, before the homeowner, puts them in that position. So I felt relieved that he doesn't want him to go get 3 bids. He wants him to hire the right guy and move on.
I have a somewhat specific question for you with regard, like, obviously you're not taking on a ton of work. You're limited to the volume based on execution standards, everything else. What are some of the tools or considerations when you have leads coming on your plate to understand if the client or the potential client who's approaching you is a fit for your business?
Well, typically, when we were talking about earlier in my career, I was the rainmaker. So I had to be the rainmaker. And so, if I didn't get the job, I had to get the job to stay on the job.
Yeah.
So now I've just built that name in the design community. And so like architects want me on the job because in terms of our back room, in terms of our process, we're clearly the most sophisticated people in our space. And so the other builders, I like them and I respect them, but in terms of like our ability to perform, I don't even know if they want to do it. Like I've got 15 employees. Like I have a lot. I don't think these guys want to manage 15 people.
Yeah.
So these other guys they're competent builders. Their product is good, but in terms of like selling against them, they don't even want to do what I do. And so
is it just a matter of understanding that the client that's coming to you wants you to do the work?
Yeah. Usually I have some kind of I would say most of the people that call me are pretty warm when they call me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they know who I am. They know my reputation. They know what I do. And if there's any obstacles, sometimes not like they want to make sure they're being treated fair, but they're not calling me because they think I'm the best deal. They know I have very high standards and I have integrity. And so like, that's the commerce. Like that's the that's what they're buying. And so, if people start using language like, hey, we're just trying to get bids from a bunch of people, that's like automatically like, hey, we're different. That's not what we do. And very rarely, if somebody's even using that vernacular, do we ever, as soon as I tell them I have a pre-construction agreement, like they're like, okay, thanks, we'll go get the other people to bid it.
Was there specific like tactics that you used to get yourself and your business kind of to that space or to position yourselves within the market? And I look at what I do, and I have the very smaller scale, smaller projects, but it's the same mentality where like the easiest way for me to vet a client is to say like, how did you hear about me?
Mm-hmm.
Or what are, why are you reaching out to me? Because it's unless they're reaching out to me because they specifically want to work with me, I understand that it's probably not an ideal fit for me. But I know that I spent, 10 years marketing myself through social media, through conversations with clients, and just pitching my business in that light. That's really how I position myself. It sounds like your business changed so much from 2017 until now. What were you able to do, like actionable insight? What were you able to do with your business to position yourself the way that you have now, where people are coming to you because they know who you were? Was it like, I'm going to do this to make this happen? Or was it just, I just kept doing the same thing and I kept working and building better jobs and building better relationships?
It's interesting because we have systems in the company, but they're not systems necessarily that I designed. I was very good in the field, and I wasn't good in the field because I had this great, iron plate system that like never failed. I'm hyper perceptive, only in construction. I can't keep up with keys. I've eliminated keys from my life because like I'm Mr. like lose the keys. Like if my wife tells me to get something out of the pantry, like I'm 0 for a million on finding it. I'm like, yeah, I don't see it. She's like, it's right here, you idiot. But in construction, I think just because I care about it so much, like my project managers hire nothing from me. So even on like trying to manage a project, I was like, I didn't have like Gantt charts and critical paths and like all of these forms. I was like, I got to order doors. What do you mean you got to order doors? We're just, but those doors are going to take 12 to 16 weeks. And I just knew it. Like I just had this, like when you wake up at 1 minute before like your alarm went off, I just had that. So I was so driven by instincts and kind of perception. That's really hard. And now I have people that have brought the systems to it. Mm-hmm. Now, I will tell you something. This is kind of like one of the core things I identify in like changing my mindset. So I thought I was doing pretty good. Like I was pretty happy with my business. I started seeing guys on Instagram. I started kind of reaching out to people in the building community. I got to know Brad Levitt. So when I got to know Brad, shortly after I met Brad, like he was coming to Nashville like 2 weeks later. So like I was like, hey man, I'm trying to do this. Are you doing this? He's like, yeah. He called me and then he's like, I'm going to be in Nashville in 2 weeks. And so Brad and I were playing golf. And at the time I thought Brad and I's businesses were about the same level. And so I said, hey, Brad, and not that I don't want to eliminate all this stuff to top line revenue. There's so much things, but just that's what we were talking about. But again, those people out there that just think this is who can get the highest top line revenue, discard that. There's so many ways to be successful without having this massive top line revenue. So I thought my mind, Brad and I probably had the similar number of jobs and similar cost per job. So I was at about 17 million a year at that point. And I said, Brad, what are you looking at? He's like 30. And I was like, damn, and
what a one-upper.
Yeah. And I was at like 17 and I was like, I'm doing 30. Like that was just like my first goal. But at that point, I'm not telling you this, before that, I didn't even ever considered doing 30.
Yeah.
Maybe Brad doesn't want me talking about how much he does on a podcast, but I was just like, you know what? When I started looking nationwide at like the best builders and like started looking at trying to be that and stopped looking at just the best builders in my market, I was like, I'm going to build $100 million company. And How? I don't know. But I just said, I'm building a $100 million company, and I don't have a spreadsheet. I don't have hey, by 2028, in order for me to stay on. Yeah. But I just said, I'm dreaming bigger. I'm going for this thing. And, but I did have like I was talking to you about those 5 jobs. Like once I came out of that, it's just been on a roll ever since. Like how I'm perceived in the marketplace, the opportunities I get just keep coming in. Now, something I'm very flattered by, there's an architect I followed. I've been following for a decade on Instagram. Oh, let me tie this to Instagram. This is kind of an interesting thing, by the way, because I think I just changed my mindset. But so
just right now?
No, in the last week. Okay. The last week, I've changed my mind.
So right now,
like literally right now,
I see people. So
200 million
guys that have big social media, like there's a part of that I'm really. I think I have things to say. I have a heart for this industry. I already mentor tons of people free. But when I see people doing events, get-togethers, things to elevate the industry, share their knowledge, like I want to be doing it, And so I go, man, I got to have this. Like I think I can help. I have a heart for this, and I think I have something to say. And I want to help these guys get through their insecurity, their obstacles, be successful builders. So maybe I got to blow up this big Instagram following, right? So whatever. I'm just under 10,000. And man, maybe I need to be chasing that 200,000. Then I realized last week, 50% of my clients don't follow me on Instagram.
Yeah.
They don't even follow me. And the ones who do followed me after they hired me. Mm-hmm. And so I'm thinking about doing some stuff in terms of that I have aspirations to do and thought leadership on another thread. But then I thought, man, wait a minute. I have like kind of the ultimate carte blanche, which is I know somebody who knows Brady. I'll call him for you. Like, isn't that like when somebody goes, hey, man, here's his cell number. Tell him I told you to call. Like, why do I want to be out here when I already have the guy that the people who knows? Maybe I don't need to be the monkey with the accordion out here trying to get attention, which I was. And I can still be thought leadership somewhere else. So I was like, hey, I don't think I'm going to put any videos of me on Instagram anymore. I'm going to just be product, just be maybe on the thought leadership side and to the extent I can help our building community. But in terms of my customers, I might go the other way. Go, he doesn't know who you are and he doesn't know somebody he ain't even going to take your call. Or just go back the other way. He's the guy that you don't call and he doesn't talk to you unless he knows why you're calling. I don't know. Just a thought. Listen, but I was like, nobody even follows me. My customers don't even follow me.
Yeah. I mean, it's valid. Like it's something that, I mean, I personally have struggled with, for forever. I've had 2 Instagram accounts. I've done, I've moved it back and forth from NS to Nick Schiffer. It's, and it's the same thing. It's like my Instagram following is primarily male and peers. So it's like, and I can attribute some of that back to clients. Like, I build rapport with architects. They see how much I care about craftsmanship and quality. We shifted our YouTube focus a month ago, and it's crazy. I'm getting at least a lead a week from YouTube, which is just solely based on the fact that we've changed the way we're messaging things. And it's weird, but there's no right or wrong answer, especially when it comes to social media. It's like, I've thought about only going to finished product on social media because it would demand a higher female audience because my audience continues to be male dominated. And you look at like Brad, like he the amount of finished product, he has so much work going on. But I think his split, I don't think it's 50-50, but he's definitely way higher on the female side.
That's because of the shaved body.
Yeah, he's been working out videos. He's
it's not because of the finished product.
Nick, I'll tell you exactly what I would do if I had your reach and your platform. I'd put architects on your podcast. Yeah. Like these guys don't know how to connect with social media, and I would go, hey, man, we're doing an architect series. We're going to interview that. Like that's all right there.
You're spot on. It's something Tyler and I were chatting about recently. I'm not gonna share too much, but we're like changing a little bit about our podcast going forward, and that has been something where it's like, how do we make a bigger impact? Not only because I mean, Modern Craftsman has always been the thought leadership. It's like I'm a builder first, but I'm a this is a community and coaching for other builders. Like, you came to our Nashville event. Like, that was like, I love doing that, but at the end of the day, it's not getting me a $10 million build.
Well, the other thing is to put like all of your eggs in one basket for social media, when it's just what you said before, Brady. Like, that one job isn't going to change your business. That one client isn't going to, and that one post isn't going to make or break what you're doing. And I think that you have to use your social to however serve you best at that time. Like, it's such a short window. It's such a short lifespan. And I think to approach social as if like, what if this client sees this, or what if this client says no because they see this? That's just not the way it's going to work. And even if it is, at the end of the day, to me, it's like, I want people hiring me for all of the right reasons. And if I'm posting something that makes you not want to hire me, I'm dodging a bullet regardless, because at the end of the day, like, this is who I am. This is what's really important to me. And if I'm showing you the inner workings of my business, you're going to get to that point with that client anyway. So like, what are you holding back? The fact to be able to sit down with them and sell them, or be able to explain in person. To me, it's like, I don't know, maybe you're putting the cart before the horse, or, maybe you're just dodging a bullet. At the end of the day, I none of us are in the position where we need 36 jobs of the year to keep us busy. I think that focusing on that handful of select clients and however they're coming through is probably more important than stressing about what's on your social and what you're doing with that and who's going to see that.
I don't think it hurts, but it won't always make it. It's not the person with the highest follower count is not going to win. But hey, I know you guys had a really successful launch with your marketing book that you guys put out. You sold 250. I did the math on that. That ain't bad,
Yeah.
And so you have opportunities like that. But I think it's good. But like, if it was me, there's a lot of these guys that don't know how to break through on social media. And if you said, hey, man, we're putting you on the podcast, everybody wants to know what it's like. You have such a prolific body of work. And man, then we're going to, we've got 200,000 followers on our other feeds. We're going to pump it up. Like they're going to take that meeting. Like, yeah, because that's the thing, man. I was thinking about this. Like, there are some architect dumps, like, and this is just think how we feel when people call us, even like subcontractors or whomever. Like, I always say this: people say, I want to work with architects, which is partly true. What they really mean is, I want architects to bring me work.
Right.
And you can work with architects right now. Hire an architect, right? Like, hire an architect, and you'll be working with them, and so if you want to get to the point where you're their peer, like, that just takes some time. So now imagine, in our world, imagine you're out there delivering for an architect. Like, their systems, you're collaborative, like, you have a strong body of work together, right? Like, how do you think that guy's just going to see something compelling? Like, you have to drop the ball before that guy usually goes looking. And so when you get that architect relationship, you want to deliver. But like, it would be weird to think. I heard your podcast last week with Culkin Brothers. Like, clearly you guys have a relationship that's based on like delivering. Like, they've been there for you. Like, you've been like each other. Like that's not undervalued. Like, you guys were cutting up. Like, this guy is like a part of your life and a part of your business. And there's been sometimes like there's not going to be some millwork company that's just going to have some kick-ass reel and you're going to go screw.
Yeah, I'm leaving.
You're going to be like, well, if Culkin Brothers screws up and they drop the ball and their quality takes a big dive, you're going to go, man, now I'm looking around. So now there might be, but just because somebody's doing it doesn't mean you're not going to necessarily jump on that relationship just because. So then once you get in the door, you want to stay in the door. Then this is where you ultimately get to, which is the best. You go from like as aspirational, like level yourself up, get in the door. Where you want to get it to is peer. Like, you're on the team. Like, when the plans go out, they go, oh yeah, those guys,
Yeah.
And, I was thinking, I always like a good analogy. There's a guitar player here in Nashville named Brent Mason.
He's the one you're building a house for?
No, I'm not building Brent. He's an accomplished guitar player. I don't know if he's spinning that kind of coin. But Brent Mason's really, really, really super accomplished. He's probably on 60% of every country. He just cut the whole Post Malone record. Like, this country, like, he's just the dude. Well, think of how many guys that have a lot of following on Instagram that are prolific guitar players. They're not peers yet. Like, when the producer calls, they go, "Hey, man, did you see this guy kicking ass on Instagram?" They go, "We're going to call Brett Mason."
Yeah, right.
Like, he's the peer at that point.
Yeah.
And so what I've learned, and where Instagram has been really valuable for me, I call it LinkedIn for architects. So first, build your architectural base locally. Your local architects are best positioned to patronize you. Like, it's fine to have iconic out-of-town architects, but the guys that are building your community mostly are going to live in your community. So target those guys first. If it's a big firm, like, sometimes there are some young associates that aren't working on their flagship projects. I would try to meet some young person at Hutger or at Patrick Ahern and go, "Hey, man, everything's not going to be in Architectural Digest or Coastal Living. What's something?" And then as that person has they might be intimidated by their bigger builders. Like, "Oh, man, I don't know if this other builder, the silver-haired guys, are older, they're not relevant." You could get in with some of the young associates on some of the projects that maybe aren't going to be published and start them go, "Hey, man, this guy's really delivering for us." So start with the younger architects. Then once you build that base locally, right, and you start working with the predominant firms. So for me, I started working with a firm called Pfeffer Tarot about 10 years ago. They were working out of their house. There's 65 associates now. So people come to me, "Man, like, what did you do?" I was like, "Oh, how did you, like, it seems like I pulled off a coup." I knew they were talented. They had both worked at McAlpin. So they had, and I love them. Like, they're generally great guys. But I was like, I didn't know that then. I just knew these were two guys that came out of McAlpin and were starting their own firm. And I was like, man, they got the right pedigree. And now I have some relationships at McAlpin, but I didn't back then. So I went and met the young guys that were starting a firm. They do the most work in Nashville. Well, I've been there for 10 years. So now I do get the first call on all of their best projects. I didn't get any projects for 5 years. I had to have this tough conversation I shared with you earlier.
Yeah.
Thought he was hiring somebody else. He was sitting in my office while we were doing this podcast. I mean, the principal of that company meeting with my team about another project. And so then what happened is, well, kind of why that wasn't going on, by the way, I did something similar to what you did, Nick, with Of Possible. I couldn't get any attention here, and nobody would hire me. I saw Jeff Dungan's work on the first pin I ever made on Pinterest. I'm not on Pinterest anymore. Was a project of Jeff Dungan. Jeff was already accomplished at that point. You know, now he's like superstar architect. And I always tell people, when I saw his work, I didn't know if he was a 25-year-old kid that lived at home or had a prolific firm, and I didn't care. I just said, whatever this dude's doing, I want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So I called him, and I drove down there, and I had a project I was trying to develop. It could have been incredible. It didn't end up manifesting. Well, I hired Jeff to do a spec. Well, all of a sudden, these Nashville architects, they all know who Jeff Dungan is, and they're going, how did Brady Fry get a Jeff Dungan job? Well, I paid him.
Right.
You know, and I do think that when people are kind of like, well, you know, here's this accomplished architect, and Brady was working with him. Well, now I get on paying Jeff Dungan jobs. Like, I get on. So now imagine this. So it took me, I was looking at this, about 10 years to have what I would call like a peer relationship with about 4 architects, right? So that took a decade.
Yeah.
Right. Well, now I picked up 4 architects in the last year, and you guys probably follow all of them, because when those out of market guys come into market, they start seeing, where's this guy showing up? They don't know the landscape in Nashville. So they start going, well, man, I see Brady Fry on Jeff Dungan, Jeremy Corcoran, LRK. I guess Brady's the guy that worked with architects.
I mean, it's the same thing as making money, right? Like the more money you have, the easier it is to make more money. And it takes a really long time to get to the point where you start making enough money to make you more money. And then it starts to snowball. And again, it's like the way that you somewhat started this podcast where like, yeah, everyone sees your success as being overnight or you lucked out, but like you don't see the 10, 15 years that I spent just in the trenches trying to establish this and get by. And I think that once you do establish yourself and once you build those connections and you build that rapport, yeah, it seemed, it took me 10 years to get the first 4, and then it took me a year to get the next 4, which are all really high level. But you can't forget how much time and effort went into that. Like it does get to a point where it seems like it's snowballing and your success may seem overnight, but it's not. And as far as the conversation on the podcast and with architects, to be fully transparent with listenership and you as well, it's really difficult to get people on the podcast and have a candid conversation without them just pitching themselves or kind of feeding you a bunch of bullshit and smoke and mirrors, right? Because they feel like this is their platform. They're going to come on. And like, that's a lot of times what people are using podcasts for, right? It's a way for me to promote ourselves, get our name out, reach other listeners and other people. And it's tough to get people on that you don't have that relationship with to just have a candid conversation as if, hey, it's the 3 of us sitting in a room. Nobody's going to hear this. They get on the podcast and it's like, well, I just want to pitch who I am and sell who I am and say all the right things. And while that may seem great on paper, it doesn't make for a great conversation because it's like, you're full of shit. Like you're saying all the right things, but we all know in the world that's not actually how it happens. And I think, you wind up being able to see through that. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges with lining up guests that are out of network is that we're going to sit down, we'll record for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we don't really know who you are. So by the time an hour and 20 minutes is in, you're finally warming up to be open and honest and canvas and vulnerable with and candid with each other. And it's like, all right, now it's time to hang this up and good podcast. It was great to meet you and speak with you.
I think I think it'd be really interesting. Like if I was going to interview Matt Reisinger, I would ask him 0 questions about building science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I would go, everybody hears you talk. So I remember, one thing I saw on Matt Reisinger that like, I remember now I have it. Like I remember at the time he was like, this is my vice president of construction. I was like, oh shit. Like, you'd have one of those. Like,
yeah.
I thought that was like me, and so like have an executive team, like was like mind expanding. So like, I remember thinking if I was going to ask Matt, like, I don't care about water heaters or about Sigatate,
sub slab insulation.
No, like you could have a leadership team aside from people that were just building.
Yeah.
Or if I was going to interview Jeff Dungan, I'd go, hey man, like you're an artist, but like now you have to like, who runs a business? Like you have like 20 employees and I'm sure that's not what you like to do. You want to draw. So like, how did you generate have a business so you could do the art stuff? Because I'm sure you don't want to sit around looking at P&Ls and projections and payroll and insurance and all that crap. And so I think you could get people in a little bit different take if you took them outside of it. What's the biggest mistake you made? Is there any houses that you're embarrassed about? Like just, lead them with those thoughtful questions. And, I think there's a path there for sure. I mean, I think it's there. Listen, people like to talk about themselves. I mean, even do it. People that I think have some integrity and humility aren't afraid to share their misses either,
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of the most valuable conversations wind up being with people who are older than us, who are going to come on and they have enough confidence in themselves and in their business to just be frank with you, and just have a conversation and not try and pitch themselves and talk about their screw ups and talk about where they missed the mark, and what the challenges of business and how they got through those challenges and just are open and willing to share the lessons that they've learned rather than get on a soapbox and try and convince people of the right path, right? What do you need to do? And I think that generally makes, at least, I don't know from a listener's perspective, but for me, that's what I like is being able to have a conversation with somebody, even you sitting down today and being prepped with things that you want to speak about, because it's like, this is really important to him. This isn't a pitch. This is experience, and this is what he's learned. And I think that's super valuable. Makes for a really great conversation that just isn't a bunch of smoke and mirrors and kind of BS.
But think how much of the time in the business, and I think that most of the time I was in business, I didn't even know it was going to go that well for me.
Yeah.
Like, so then all of a sudden, when you look back and go, "Hey, man, now I've got employees that are being successful. Like they're buying houses and getting married and taking great vacations." Like you feel like, again, you had at least, again, we're all subject to market changes. Like I'm not invincible, but you do have that confidence. Like most of the time I was like, man, I don't even know if this is going to work out for me, much less if I'm going to be able to be a vehicle for anybody else to reach their goals.
Yeah.
And then would I be confident enough in all of that I could reach back to somebody who's 10 years behind me and like help build them up? Like, I didn't know if wisdom was even going to work out for me.
And that's the interesting thing is that, like, and I have conversations with people that they don't realize that we're all in that boat, right? That like we're kind of making it up, and that, you know, you create a budget and you create an estimate and you're just guessing. And no matter what your systems are, no matter how much historical data you have, you're still just kind of guessing. And that a lot of this is made up, and nobody wants to sit in front of a camera or sit on a podcast and say, life, we're making it up as we go. Business, we're making it up as we go. And then, like, I think our responsibility to our community, to our listeners, and to the industry and the younger people is to then realize where we are and inventory what the last 10 years looked like, and gauge what went right and what went wrong and what was successful. And I think that's what Nick and I are trying to do as much as possible, is create a place where we can tell you what worked for us and what didn't. But like most of it is we're going to like throw this and see if it sticks against the wall. Yeah. And if it does, we'll circle back 5 years from now and tell you, do this, don't do that. And it's a shame that that's the way that the industry is, but it just kind of is that way. And I think when you can be open and honest about that, and that, yeah, like we don't have it all figured out, and that a lot of times we're unsure if what we're doing is going to work out. That's just the case. Like that's our industry. Unfortunately, it's not as calculated as people may make it seem to be. And that's why I think it's so important to lean on people who have been there before and have trusted systems that you can mimic and you can try and implement and integrate into your business to at least give you some sort of advantage, instead of everyone starting out day one at the absolute bottom and then fighting for 10, 15 years to just try and scratch the surface of everything. And then it's like, all right, I'm 20 years in, I'm finally making a little bit of money.
Well, there's no room at the bottom. Everybody's at the bottom. The bottom is super crowded. And so no matter what you're going to do, you got to find like some way to interject some value. Cause like the bottom's where people go to die. Like even people say that to me, like, I'm willing to start at the bottom. I was like, well, you are not going to make it.
You better climb quickly.
Everyone's going to die. But what if you had that same perception, imagine you got hired to build a house, a glass and steel curtain structure, like an Apple store. Like you would go, well, I've never done that. Like, I don't know anything about load bearing glass. There might be some obstacles that you had mentally, but we overcome those. Like you're using a building cladding that I wasn't familiar with, but you go, yeah, but it's not about that I know everything, but I know how to vet and proceed with things that I don't know. So I don't have a fear of the unknown as it relates to building materials, right? Because you go, I'm going to find this product. We're going to do some samples. We're going to see how we want this thing to course out. But I think the same thing is true with business. Like you don't have to know it all. You just have to understand and have this level head and how you're going to connect dots and seek truth and then ask questions. And once you get validation from a couple sources, you go, okay, I've asked 3 people that have experience in this space, whether it's with a product or about business. And then you go, hey man, I think I know which way the compass is pointing now. I got this answer. This is validated by another person I trust. And so we develop that kind of coping mechanism and that navigational ability in construction. But then sometimes with business, we just lose it. I don't know. It's hey man, just like anything else, if you were trying to learn something about a product or an installation, or right, you would look for wisdom, want that wisdom validated, and that would give you the confidence. It's really the same thing. And it's why I think even construction is such a kind of a roadmap for how to navigate your life. One thing I say to my employees all the time, I'll start trying to give them instructions and they'll head down. And I'm hold on, eyes up, man, eyes up. I'm trying to teach you. I want you to understand how to build a house. If you understand, you're never going to be lost. If you try to memorize how to build a house, you're going to be off track the first obstacle you hit. First time you hit an obstacle, you're going to be befuddled because
this isn't the way I've road mapped it.
But I'm never lost. I'm never lost on a job site ever. I know how to build a house. And so somebody goes, "Oh man, the dang mechanical contractor." I go, "Okay, this is my next path." And so I think there's a little bit of that in business. Man, it's so funny because I got all my employees are outstanding, but my 2 real key employees that are my directors, we're dealing with so much technology and project management stuff. Our brains are so fast. All these people come in to demonstrate their hardware or their software rather, and we're already hey, we don't think this is going to work. No, if you just see this, 30 minutes later they get there. Why? Because we do that all day long. And so we go, you put this in and that's going to, let's see what comes. Oh yeah, it doesn't work. I just think it just trains your brain to process information, find out what the path forward is. And I try to do the same thing with business. I say all the time, guys, I was a good builder, was a long time ago. Being a good CEO, was way harder than I thought. I mean, the personal growth it required of me was I just thought, hey, I'm a smart guy. I know how to build. I'm going to go out and, have some of the success these other guys are having. I am having some of it, but man, there was some days I was just maybe I'm not the guy,
Yeah.
So.
The building is the easy part. And I think that it is what you were just conveying is extremely important. I think it comes down to a lot of wisdom is not actually knowing how as much as being able to ask the questions. And I think that comes with experience and with confidence. I can recall being younger and wanting everyone to think that I had all the answers and being afraid to ask questions, especially in the public's eye. And I think as I mature in business and in life, I'm not ashamed of what I don't know. And I'm more than willing to ask people for help with regard to whatever it may be, life, business, technical application, which I think comes with experience. And I definitely view wisdom a lot different nowadays than I did when I was 25, where I think I was putting up this facade to pretend like I had all the answers. And now I'm no, I know I don't, but I surround myself with people that can get me from point A to point B.
The most important thing is just know how to search for wisdom, recognize it when you find truth, and you go, "Now I feel good," I think you guys are doing outstanding. You guys are young guys, and I think you might go from that frustration to all of those sacrifices. Seem like they pay off overnight. It goes from just toiling and rejection. I'll tell you one funny story. Again, there's an architect one time I was boo-hooing about my lack of success. And he said, "Now, Brady," he said, "you're going to have to understand there's some Brady jobs, but there's going to be other jobs that are going to be more of a Jared Danford job. And you need to be okay with that." Mm-hmm. Jared Danford was a project manager that had worked for the most prolific builder in Nashville at the time. And he went out on his own. Every job I interviewed for, he got. I think in 3 or 4 years, he was out of business. Not part of the story. The day I heard he went out of business, I drove over to where his office was. There's a for sale sign in the yard, and I bought his office. Little vindication there. However, that architect and I were both on a travel and learn trip to the what's the door factory in Denver, Colorado? I can't believe I'm forgetting about it.
Not Reeb, Thermatru.
No, it's True Style. We're touring the True Style plant. Our rep took us both out there. I don't drink a lot, but maybe this night I drank a little bit too much. Oh, architect who will go unnamed. Remember that time you were very patronizing to me and you told me that there was going to be Brady jobs and kind of diminished me, but then other jobs are going to be more esteemed and needed to go to this other builder, and I need to be okay with that. And I said, man, that guy got ran out of town with pitchforks. And he said, well, you should be very proud of what you built. It felt pretty nice at the time, but here a few years earlier, and again, he's an accomplished architect. I would still work with him, but I reminded them, I try not to really look for vindication, but getting a little bit every once in a while didn't feel too bad.
Yeah, it can. Well, Brady, we appreciate it. It was very nice to meet you.
Yeah,
and we appreciate all of your time and your insight and being prepared for the conversation. I really enjoyed it and had a good time. And also appreciate your being able to audible a bit. I know we bumped us back a little bit later than normal.
Oh, no problem. Like I said, it's a rainy Nashville day, and I'm sure I'll run into you guys in Vegas. I'm going to try to get time to come have a cocktail if I can get on my flights.
Nice.
To work out. So
we'll be out there.
I got you guys in your audience, and stay in touch, because I'm telling you, I think you guys can feel that momentum just feels like the dam just breaks, and it feels nice, but it's a little tougher road before that.
Yeah, we'll appreciate it.
Amen.
Yeah. Reach out anytime, guys. Take care.
I'll see you soon, Brady. Dude, I love Brady. I met him in Nashville at our first summit, and we've kept in touch kind of sporadically. But I mean, I only read part of his message, but his message was like multiple messages long.
Would he send you a DM?
Yeah, because I think he was listening to one of the podcasts, and he was just talking about like the struggle of like getting in with architects. And he just dumped information, and I'm like, I'm not even going to read this. I was like, I appreciate you. Let's get you on the podcast ASAP. What's your email?
Yeah, that's great. You can tell that he's very excited about where he is and the work that's gone into it. Yeah. And just, I'm sure that he feels as if he finally caught his break. And I think that there is validation and vindication there. And you can tell he's just like super pumped to share as much as he knows and how much of it, how much experience he's had in life and in business. And I think that that's really encouraging for everyone.
100%. As always, guys, make sure you check us out on moderncraftsman.co. We'll see you next week.